This week in Texas politics started the new year with some familiar topics still in play. Let's get the headlines from our panel, and we'll begin first with Connie Sweeney from the Highlander. Connie, what's your headline for the week?
Expect a few dust-ups as Texans tiptoe into 2024.
Brian Smith with St. Edward's University. What's your headline for the week?
2024 brings a new set of laws and a new set of lawsuits.
And Patrick Svitek with the Texas Tribune. Hit me with a headline, Patrick.
A very contentious Republican primary season is officially upon us.
Well, the big story of this new year, this first week of the new year, unfortunately continues to be the border. But the issue had several different aspects to it. Migrant surges, lawsuits, congressional visits, sanctuary city meltdowns, and border bill chicken being played on Capitol Hill. Patrick, which one of all those, or did all of them catch your attention?
Look, I think what continues to catch my attention as a national story is how these Democratic-run cities are dealing with Texas Governor Greg Abbott's migrant busing program. You are really seeing them under a lot of duress right now, dealing with the influx of migrants to their city, relatively speaking, compared to what they've had in the past, due to this busing program. And you're seeing them get very vocal, obviously in their criticism of Governor Abbott, but also in their pleas for help from the federal government from a fellow Democrat, President Joe Biden. And they're starting to almost kind of get creative in how they're dealing with this. You saw this week, the New York City Mayor, Eric Adams, is suing a number of the charter bus companies to try to shut down this program as it relates to his city. And so that is a national story related to the border that continues to fascinate me.
Connie, what border story is sticking in the Hill Country?
Well, Rudy, all eyes on the governor's signature border policy. I mean, SB 3, SB 4, we're starting to see that, of course, unfold in the southern part of the state. Now, SB 4, of course, would make it a penalty or a state crime to cross illegally, while SB 3 would give about $40 million more to the Texas Department of Public Safety for them to ramp up enforcement of criminal activity in the alleged illegal immigrant settlement known as Colony Ridge. Now, if these two particular types of legislation can avoid some of the legal roadblocks, we may see an expanded enforcement effort in other parts of the state.
Brian, which border story caught your eye?
I have to agree with Patrick. I mean, we've seen that Texas border story forever, the things going on, but the nationalization of it, I think, has really been exciting to watch because of all the different political and legal maneuvering. New York says no to buses, so the buses now stop across the river in Jersey, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens next.
You know, the border crisis certainly has angered both Republicans and Democrats lately, but the Biden administration seems to be sending conflicting messages about what to do about all this. We're hearing everything from, the system's broken, to another amnesty plan being pitched out. Connie, is the border factoring into any of the local primary races out there in the Hill Country?
We're watching a couple of primary races in the Republican Party, of course, because State Representative Andrew Murr will not be seeking re-election. That particular race has a potential for becoming a contest of who's toughest on the border. But the one that we're watching really closely is the House District 19 race. Ellen Troxclair, she's the incumbent there. And she's got a challenger, Kyle Biederman, who has been making the rounds and challenging her to the debate stage, which she hasn't answered that yet, but she probably will take him up on it because she won a contentious primary election the last time around and went toe-to-toe with her opponent there. Now, she has the endorsement of Governor Abbott, but Kyle Biederman may be trying to bank on making inroads with those folks that are unhappy with the governor or don't believe he's been doing enough on the border.
Multiple polls have been done about the border crisis. They all come out saying that people want something to be done with it. But Brian, it seems like we still can't find an answer to this.
Yeah, we know that immigration and border security are top issues in Texas and much more pronounced among Republicans. So you're not going to get a lot of headway in the Republican primaries because everybody's on the same page. What we are seeing is that nationalization. There's an Economist poll that just came out. 88% of respondents said immigration is somewhat or very important. And the issue overall is most important issue, more important right now than climate change, abortion, and guns. So this is going to be a big issue going into 2024 at the national level.
You know, the governor talks about the border a lot on the national stage, but here locally, Patrick, he is talking about his private school choice scholarship plan that didn't get through the legislature. He's trying to flip some seats. Do you think he's going to be able to do that? He needs, the number I hear is 12. Do you think he's going to get the 12?
You know, I don't think that he's going to get all the seats that he needs to, get a solid majority in the Texas House to pass this plan next session. But I think he has a good opportunity to make some headway. Even before you look at the primary challengers that he's backing, there are a number of open seats where, the front runner or some of the most viable candidates already support this plan, whether they're endorsed by Governor Abbott or not. So even in those open seats, you're going to pick up a few more supporters, for this plan going into the next session. I still think the math, the gulf is a little hard to overcome just in this one election. But I do think Abbott will make some progress this primary season in picking up more supporters of this policy.
You agree with that, Brian?
Well, regardless of party, legislators are most selfish about issues that pertain to their districts. And until Governor Abbott can explain to rural legislators what's in it for them, he's not going to get their support. He runs statewide. Legislators care about local issues and local benefits. They're not going to fundamentally alter school finance so the governor can have a policy victory, Republican or Democrat. He's got to sell that, and he hasn't been able to do it. He tried all fall, and he failed.
Hey, Connie, is this the issue in the Hill Country? Is this the one for the primaries?
Well, here in the rural area, we did hear a collective sigh of relief from the public school superintendents and the school board when the school voucher compromise failed to cross the finish line. But state leaders are still going to hear from parents who are concerned about the state of public schools. And so that's why we're not going to see the voucher debate go away anytime soon. And here's something to realize about this area. In rural communities, typically the school districts are one of the biggest employers. So when you've got the rural lawmakers that are faced with possibly losing support from that voting bloc, they're a little bit more resistant to signing on to it.
Ken Paxton continues to be fighting his whistleblower lawsuit settlement, whatever that is going on. He's been ordered to provide a deposition along with other key staff members, but he's trying to prevent that from happening. Friday, filing new paperwork here in Travis County to prevent having to be deposed. Patrick, will this ever happen? Will he ever testify?
That's a great question. We've already seen so many twists and turns in this legal saga just since the impeachment trial in the fall. Basically, the whistleblowers are trying to restart their whistleblower lawsuit against Ken Paxton in Travis County, and he's fighting them every step of the way. His lawyers are basically arguing that this is effectively settled. There's no more litigation to be had. So far, multiple judges have looked very skeptically at that argument and rejected it. But Paxton's office is continuing to push, continuing to try to effectively shut down this litigation in Travis County. As you pointed out, their latest tactic is to fight a ruling by a Travis County judge that Ken Paxton and 3 of his top aides must sit for depositions. And so he's going to a state appeals court in Travis County to try to get that ruling reversed. I think this is probably going right back to the Texas Supreme Court, and that's an all-Republican court. So the way they look at this will be, I think, a little more revealing.
He can't afford to testify, Connie, because, right now he's got support in the Hill Country. But, if he gets on the stand and says, yeah, I committed adultery, yeah, I helped my donor friend, it's going to backfire on him, right?
Folks are seeing some of these legal maneuvers as same song, third, fourth, fifth verse. So eventually we're going to have to see these guys show up in court and have their say, or at least answer to what the allegations are.
Is there some Paxton fatigue there, Brian?
Right now, I think there might be a little bit of Paxton fatigue, but it never seems to end. And when you have so many different allegations and cases against you, eventually he's going to have to come to court, and then we'll see it start all over again.
Former Texas Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson died just before New Year's after having back surgery. This week, her family announced her death was allegedly caused by an infection that she got at a Dallas recovery facility, and they're threatening to file a lawsuit. Texas law limits medical malpractice awards to $250,000 punitive damages. They can go much higher. But I think that this case could spark a revisiting of tort reform when state lawmakers return to Austin. What do you think, Connie?
Well, Rudy, it's doubtful that one high-profile case may start some sort of campaign or move towards tort reform. I think in the past, what we've seen is lawmakers will sign on to something like this when you have either some serial malpractice that's happening or some egregious continuous abuse by a facility or a doctor. So that then you'll start to see perhaps some lawmakers decide to push for that. Now, as you know, in 2021, there was a tweaking to tort law in Texas that kind of made it easier for some of these families that were seeking damages to work their way through the court system. And at that time, it was considered somewhat of a victory for the plaintiffs. But as far as the caps, those have stuck for a couple of decades.
I covered the tort reform debate in the early 2000s. Is it time to revisit this again, maybe adjust those caps?
Tort reform is not an exciting issue in an election year, and it would be at the very end of the agenda in the legislative session. There's a lot bigger things going on and a presidential election. So I don't see much movement on this issue until way after the fall and maybe right before sine die.
Yeah, but Patrick, this is a high-profile death, high-profile case. This changes the debate, doesn't it?
Well, there's no doubt when you have a high-profile case, it definitely brings attention to a policy issue in a new light and gets more eyeballs on it than it otherwise would. But right now, there are very powerful interests in Texas that like the way our tort law is currently written, and if there were any proposed changes to it, they would fight vigorously, and they have a lot of powerful Republican allies who would probably be on their side. So I don't think this is going to lead to any major changes in that law.
31 new state laws took effect in January. They include property tax changes, shutting down university DEI programs, a cost of living adjustment for retired teachers, and banning e-cigarettes marketing to minors. Hey guys, what new law came under the radar for you? Patrick?
Well, I mean, the one that was the most politically charged, I think, was the anti-DEI law, which went into effect on January 1st, shutting down these DEI offices and programs at public colleges and universities across the state. I mean, that continues to be a massive, national debate. It has been, it was a huge Republican priority during the regular legislative session. So that one, I think, is going to be, the implementation of that is going to be interesting to watch, because you do have university leaders in Texas who are complying with that law, but they still want to foster a diversity on their campus. And so some of them are looking for ways to still achieve that goal within the confines of that law. And you're no doubt going to have some Republican lawmakers who are going to be scrutinizing those university leaders and everything they do, perhaps concerned that they're trying to get around the law. So I could see that still being a debate, at least among Republicans in Austin.
Connie, which law hit your radar?
Well, a law that flew below the radar, I thought, was House Bill 3186. And that was the Youth Intervention or Youth Diversion and Early Intervention Act, and essentially aimed at young people that commit minor crimes, and it allows them and their families to opt into a program that, instead of just moving them through the system, they might have an opportunity to possibly pay closer attention to if there's issues of mental illness or if there is a substance abuse issue. And I think in the end, if it does work or works well, we might see fewer students or youngsters that get involved in tragic incidents without anybody knowing where it came from. And also there might be a prevention element to it, where they would less likely just get lost spiraling in the criminal justice system.
I had high hopes for the HOA reform law, but I thought it was a swing and a miss. Brian, what one did you spot?
I said also the HOA reform. I mean, like legislation, HOAs are invisible until your grass is too high and you run afoul of one. And hopefully these new laws should clarify some of those nebulous HOA powers regarding fines and fees and how much this is going to cost you.
All right, let's wrap up this first week of 2024 with one word. Connie, we'll start with you. What's your word for the first week?
Because of the national attention on the increasing border crossings, I say surge.
Patrick, your word.
I was going to say border as my word as well, because our conversation reminded me of how that issue just remains so omnipresent locally, at the state level, and nationally.
Brian, close it out with a word.
Iowa.
And that is This Week in Texas Politics.